In what may be one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen, Cori Bush, a progressive Democrat, says she was a victim of a forced abortion. She said she begged the doctors to stop, and they wouldn't. I say this is one of the most shocking videos I've ever seen because, well, look, I've seen war, I've seen conflict, I've seen accidents, I've seen corruption. But even the most brutal and vile video of someone committing a crime, punching an old man in the face, or a shootout in public, these are things that we know are bad and we try to stop. These are things, typically the worst videos that involve destroying people's lives or taking their lives. In this, not only do we have an individual do we have someone's life being taken, the baby in this regard, we have a woman who's a Democrat, a progressive, saying, I begged them to stop. Cori Bush is progressive. For what reason this interview came out, I don't understand. She talks about it in her book that she was the victim of a forced abortion. Let me play for you this clip from PBS. You can see it for yourself.
You talk about the experience you had with abortion is how nuanced your view is, because this is a complicated topic. And you talk about how the fact that it's complicated showed up in your own life.
Yes.
You became pregnant 2 years later when you were 19. And you chose to have an abortion. You went to an abortion clinic. At this time, you were enrolled in university. You had started Harris Stowe State University. And you got to the clinic and had second thoughts.
Yes.
Walk me through what happened.
So I was thinking back to the first abortion. Okay, you've done this before. You know the rooms. You know what it looks like. You know what it feels like in this place. You know what to expect. You know that you may experience even some harm or some racism.
I want to pause right there and just make sure we highlight that. Cori Bush says she knows what it's like in this place and she may experience some harm or some racism. Now, initially, I think a lot of people might be like, come on, like you're coming into a clinic. Do you really think? You hear the story. And when she talks about what they did, I have to wonder if, look, Kanye is trending right now. You see this? Kanye's trending because he talked about Margaret Sanger. I have to wonder if there's abortion, if there's racism behind this. Let's keep playing.
In this space. Like, I thought I was ready.
Because you had experienced racism previously.
I had. So I thought I was ready. And I went in and I went through all the steps because they were like, it's almost like an assembly line. You go from room to room.
That's creepy.
And I got into the last room. I was helped up onto the table by the nurse. And I laid there and I started to think, well, one, I didn't tell the father that was about to happen. I just felt like I needed more time. So I said, no, you know what? I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. And the nurse just, wouldn't listen to me. And I said, no, I'm not ready. And as I'm saying no, they continued to pull the instruments and, get everything ready. And it was just like, no, calm down. No, you're going to be okay.
So you were telling them that you didn't want to move forward.
Yes.
And they were ignoring you.
They absolutely ignored me, even to the point of, like, calm down, as if I was the problem. And so I didn't really know, I didn't understand at that point where I had a voice, like who listens to me. And so I remember laying there looking to see if there was someone else in the room that would listen to me. And they ended up during this time, they put the instrument inside me and started the instrument. So it was, and I'm saying no, but It was too late because you couldn't stop once it started.
Why do you think they didn't listen to you?
The same as other times where I haven't been listened to by a provider or medical staff. I was a young Black woman. I
don't think it's for her to answer why. I don't. I don't know how you verify a story like this, but this is insane. And, man, I feel bad for Cori Bush. That's a crazy story, man. Cori, I'm sorry I had to deal with something like that. And I'm impressed that you're willing to speak out about it because politics these days, they're so intense. One of the things that surprised me about this video is that a progressive is willing to come out and outright say this happened. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, at a time when they're claiming that Roe v. Wade is a defining issue of the midterms and it's going to save the Democrats, you have something as powerful a statement as this. It's something people need to hear. Because I got questions about racism too. Look, I think oftentimes you hear stories about racism. And, often these are legitimate claims by people who are experiencing it. And I'll tell you, they would know. You know what I mean? But the problem I have is so many of these woke liberals reject any concept of racism when it doesn't align with their weird, pseudo-Marxist, or I should say like neo-Marxist views. When you have someone who comes out like Candace Owens to make a point, they'll call her racist. They'll call her a white supremacist. So often I'm just like, I don't know if I believe you. But we've had people come on Timcast IRL. We've had people who are black, who are Asian, Latino, and talk about the racism they've experienced. Obviously, I have too, probably not to the same extent as someone like Cori Bush. But it really makes you wonder, man, when you look at Planned Parenthood facilities, and they're always real close or in black and Latino communities. Now, there's been a lot of people have stated that Margaret Sanger was an outright eugenicist who didn't like black people. And I don't want to oversimplify anyone's positions, but Michael Malice, who's a good friend of ours, has rejected this and said and no. So I'm not a historian. I've had a lot of people show me things and be like, this is true. But I'll tell you this right now. What's the argument here? Cori Bush says she did experience racism in an abortion clinic. She then says she went in, had second thoughts, said no, and they would not stop. Are we supposed to just outright be like, I don't believe her when she claims there was racism? I don't believe her when she said no and begged them and they wouldn't stop. Or do we believe her? Now I'll say, all right, evidence. You need some kind of evidence. But I remember Believe All Women. And what they were doing with this was they were like, believe all women is, you have to believe them, right? And we were like, no. You believe with the evidence. What we do is we take the claims seriously. When someone comes out and says that they were assaulted or abused, we say, we take it seriously and we'll investigate like we would for any victim. And if we can't find evidence to corroborate it, when no one gets arrested. This is interesting. Are we going to believe all women now? If you're a progressive, if you're a leftist, are you going to believe all women now when Cori Bush is the one coming out saying she's the victim of a forced abortion? It's this crazy story, man. Firing line with Margaret Hoover, PBS, publishing this. Wow. I'm impressed. Life News. They're not NewsGuard certified. NewsGuard says they are fake news. But this is a video. It's outright a video. She says it. From the Washington Post. Biden warns of GOP's extreme policies as he marks 100 days since Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Yeah, it's the Republicans' extreme policies. Look, I understand why someone is saying they take issue with what's happening in terms of abortion. And I think we've got a very serious problem when what happened to Cori Bush can happen, and it should not happen. How many times do you think this has probably happened? Now, full disclosure, I'm pro-choice. If Cori Bush says she wants to get an abortion and it is pre-viability, well, I lean towards choice on this one. I will recognize I don't like the idea of elective abortions as contraception. But this story right now should be a red flag for anyone. Cori Bush said she didn't want one, and they did it anyway. Yo, that's crazy. But here's the crazy thing. Do you think the left, the progressives, will come out and highlight this? I don't think so. I think they'll mostly ignore it. I could be wrong. Hopefully I will be. Hopefully they'll come out and say there needs to be some kind of safeguard so something like this doesn't happen. How does Cori Bush get justice for what happened to her? So you have this idea. There are these pregnancy centers. They're pro-life, but they basically just provide, food and carriages for pregnant women. I see all these memes where there was one meme I saw. It was an empty queue. It was like the ropes leading up to a clerk. And it said the pro-life queue for adoption. And it was empty. And I'm like, that's just ridiculous. Pro-lifers do adopt more than pro-choice. It's like there's a bunch of stats on this. I don't know if it's like significant enough, but people who are pro-life tend to. They claim that the pro-lifers don't care about babies. Yo, I have a philosophical and ethical argument with the concept of outright pro-life and the limitations of abortion. And as much as I prefer elective abortions don't happen, there's a serious challenge in the government's authority to grant someone someone the right to your body. That's why I'm like, after the baby's viable, there's no reason to kill it. That's just insane. But I digress. What we're talking about here is pregnancy centers that provide for women, and that's it. The left wants to argue that pro-lifers won't support women, but they are. And then what happens? Firebombing, vandalism, and destruction at pro-life pregnancy centers. Here's why I bring this up. For one, the hypocrisy. But two, they say that women go there and they're tricked. They think it's an abortion clinic, and then these people convince them to keep the baby. And it's just like, okay. Like, are people not allowed to be like, I would like to persuasively tell you not to get an abortion? That's what they should be doing. They firebomb these buildings and destroy them. Meanwhile, at an actual abortion clinic, Cori Bush says no, and they just keep going. The argument made by many of the pro-abortion camp, because it's not pro-choice, it's pro-abortion, is that it's manipulation to try and convince a woman to have a baby. What? Sure, fine, whatever. Why is it wrong to try and convince someone? If you want to state your case for abortion, go ahead and do it. If you want to force a woman to undergo an abortion, you should be in prison. The argument right now, this is the problem. People on the right, they roll over and they accept defeat in these capacities, in these circumstances. That they would say, okay, fine. We'll give it up. We won't argue for this. No, the right should be arguing that, and many do, that abortion clinics should try and persuade women not to get abortions beforehand. The woman who's getting an abortion should know definitively in her heart of hearts why it has to be done for whatever the reason. Hopefully, it's not an elective, random, I don't care kind of thing that we're seeing in the media. My view of abortion is it's complicated. I'll say that for sure. I don't like it. Don't want it to happen. But there are certain circumstances. 6 weeks in, maybe. And there's, let's just say that within 6 weeks, there's a threat to the viability of the fetus. There's a risk to the mother's health. Serious concerns. That's when I'm like, okay, that I recognize. If the baby is viable, meaning it can survive on its own, there's no reason to kill it. So this is a very important point. Even when they're talking about the health of the mother, if they're like, the mother cannot carry this baby to term or she'll die, I say, agreed, deliver it. She can't deliver it or she'll die. Okay, C-section. Only in the event that they say there is no way to get this baby out would I agree with a post-viability abortion. And only then. And the challenge there is, how do you trust that it's true and correct? I'm not going to make up a reason. I don't know. I have an issue with the government coming in and being like, we've hereby determined this woman's body is now shared with this individual. And I'm like, that's tough. That's tough. I wish it were an easy situation, but we got a lot to consider. Personal liberty and responsibility. It is the personal responsibility of the woman. If she chose to engage in relations and became pregnant, well, if she accepted the responsibilities, she's got to deal with the consequences. But then what about a question of rape? I'm not even talking about incest because there's still choice there. But outright rape. The woman did not act irresponsibly, and it was forced upon her. Many people have said to me, Tim, it's not the baby's fault, and its life shouldn't be terminated because of the crime. And I'm like, and the life of the baby is of equal right as the right of the woman carrying it. Now, I understand the pro-life argument. Killing a baby is worse than making a woman carry the baby for 9 months. I get it. I do. You don't want to see the baby die. You think the life is that important. My view is more of a libertarian perspective and less of a conservative one, because I'm not particularly conservative. My view is the government should never have the right in any circumstance to mandate someone provide their body to someone else. If the baby is viable, the baby can be safely removed and provided for so that it can grow and survive. But that's why I think that there shouldn't be any kind of pregnancy termination electively post-viability. It's at that point, it's like the baby's viable, personal responsibility plays a role. I get it. I know the ethics and the morals are difficult on this one. I'm not going to pretend to be the arbiter of truth and morality, and I certainly understand the pro-life position. Your moral line is don't end the baby's life, and I truly get it. And I agree it's wrong to do. My moral line is I will never say the government can make the determination of whose life is more valuable and how much time one person must sacrifice for another. I just do not believe the government should be doing that. So here's what it brings me to. If a woman is 6 weeks pregnant, I don't see the government having a right to intervene when she's making a determination. I do think it's wrong elective abortion. And perhaps there's a compromise we can come to. We say, okay, we've talked about this. If you think that abortion abortion as it pertains to rape and incest and all that, they say that, it's incredibly rare. Here's what I'm trying to get to. We can say all abortions with cause, all of them, if it means elective abortions are out. Because they often say like, oh, in these circumstances, it's incredibly rare that a woman, is getting an abortion for this or that reason. My point is just define the parameters where you're okay saying we won't allow this. The issue is we're not dealing with pro-choice and pro-life. We're dealing with pro-abortion. And that's why this happened to Cori Bush. Because these people are not pro-choice, they're pro-abortion. It's why Kanye West is trending right now. Well, they say because of Instagram, but he appeared on Tucker Carlson and talked about Margaret Sanger and eugenics and all that stuff. I don't think he's wrong, man. I don't think he's wrong. My ideal scenario, women don't get abortions. My less than ideal scenario, the government is intervening and demanding information on women as it pertains to their pregnancies. I've heard really good pro-life arguments, but I will be honest with you guys. Deep down in my personal and moral ethics that are hard to define, there is just a barrier where I'm like, I just don't understand, and I will not respect the government making these mandates. I just can't do it. I can't. And there are women who say they'd kill themselves if they were forced. If a woman is raped and then she has to carry the baby and you're like, but don't punish the baby. And I'm like, I get it, man. But dude, the woman didn't make that choice. And now you have to deal with the rights of two individuals. You argue that the needs, the life of the baby outweighs the discomfort of the woman. And I'm just like, the government as a collective, the people do not have a right to determine morality and what is, in that, don't have a right to determine in my view, subjugating someone for the sake of another person is what I'm trying to say. I certainly understand that we collectively do determine morality. Murder is wrong. It's illegal. You go to jail for it. But I think there's a challenge in issuing a kind of determination as the public that is a detriment to someone else. It's just tough. I don't know. Like, imagine if you bought a car and then it turns out that the guy who sold it, was a criminal. And so they say, well, that car was purchased initially through illicit funding. That man then sold it to you and you had no idea. So we're seizing it. It's like, whoa, hold on. And they sometimes do this. I don't like the idea that the government would be like, you've had this car for 3 years, but the person you bought it from, he did buy it legitimately from a dealership, but with drug money. That was a crime. We're taking the car from you. An adverse event against an individual who was acting responsibly. I have a difficult time overcoming that. As it pertains to elective abortion for, like a woman she hooks up, she's irresponsible. I completely agree that's wrong. How do we determine that? And I don't know, man. I don't know. I just always fall back to less government involvement, I suppose. But again, I certainly don't agree with the pro-abortion crowd. They just seem to want it. This story, man, this is... Right now, we're being told that Roe v. Wade is going to be this defining moment in the midterms. And maybe it seems to have given a big boost to Democrats, but gas prices are not far behind. Probably gas prices are above abortion for sure. But I mean, the gas prices are going up. It's starting to get worse. In LA, it's like it's over $7 now. I think the average is like $6.50. I don't think Roe v. Wade is going to play as big of a role as people think. And I think stories like this from people like Cori Bush are a wake-up call to what's really going on with a lot of this stuff. Now, maybe this story is anomalous. I certainly hope so. I hope Cori Bush gets justice. I hope she gets sympathy from many on the right. I hope people ask her to please keep sharing these stories and work towards preventing this. And at the very least, if there's one thing we can agree on, by all means, fine. Pro-choice, pro-life, pro-abortion, whatever. We should have safeguards to make sure this doesn't happen. If a woman goes to a clinic and then she has second thoughts, the doctor should be forced to immediately stop. Just immediately. It's a scary story, We hear about similar things when it comes to people who are like trans too. They say there was a bunch of these stories from detransitioners who talk about how they're in the hospital bed and they're saying, this is a bad idea, I don't want to do this. And they're like, no, everything's going to be fine. Be brave. And then these people are saying no, but they don't care. We got to have some kind of protections for people who are outright expressing they don't want to go through with a medical procedure. There should be no grounds of like, everybody has second thoughts, so we ignore it. Nah, none of that. The moment someone says no, it should be full stop. We can't proceed. These are people's lives. There is a child, and this story from a long time ago, a human being whose light will never shine. There's a viral meme where this woman's like, you claim that the child that's aborted could have cured cancer, but the gay kid you bullied and the blah, 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 blah. It's like, the argument they're trying to make is the people you're bigoted towards who are bullied into suicide could also change the world. And it's like, dude, the people who are advocating for saving kids are not advocating for bullying gay kids. Some might be, but that's not an argument. The pro-life people want everyone to live. And they say, yeah, you're pro-life, but you support the death penalty. And it's like, a child that has committed no crime is different from someone who like murdered a kid. It's absurd, man. And it culminates in this. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.